Chapter 2. Capitain Boudaoud arrives. The call reached Capitain Nesrine Boudaoud at 4:12 a.m., when the sky was still the color of wet slate, and the sea outside her window was nothing but a restless, shifting darkness. She had been awake already, she often was at that hour, sitting at her small kitchen table with a cup of coffee she never finished, listening to the wind scrape against the shutters of her flat in Saint-Malo. The dispatcher's voice was tight, uncertain. A break-in, a possible homicide, Birkin House. Nesrine closed her eyes briefly. Of all the houses on the coast, it had to be that one. She dressed quickly, pulling on her dark coat, tying her hair back with the efficiency of someone who had done this too many times. The streets were empty as she drove, the headlights cutting through the mist that clung to the road like a living thing. The closer she got to the cliffs, the heavier the fog became, as though the land itself wanted to hide what had happened. When she reached the house, dawn was only a rumor behind the clouds. Birkin House stood silent, its shutters closed, its walls streaked with salt and age. The garden gate hung open. A young officer, too young, Nesrine thought, waited by the path, shifting nervously from foot to foot. "Captain," he said, relieved. "The suspect is inside. He's shaken." "Shaken," she repeated, stepping past him. "Good. It means he's still human." Inside, the air was cold enough to sting her lungs. The kitchen smelled faintly of copper and damp stone. Vincent Marge sat at the table, his hands wrapped around a mug he wasn't drinking from. His eyes were wide, unfocused, as though he were still running. Nesrine studied him for a long moment before speaking. "You broke in?" He nodded. "You found something?" Another nod. "Something you weren't prepared for." His throat worked. "I didn't touch them. I swear. I didn't even go near them. I opened the door and—" He broke off, shaking. Nesrine didn't comfort him. She didn't need to. Fear was honest. It told her more than words ever could. "Show me," she said. He hesitated, then rose on unsteady legs and led her down the narrow corridor. The air grew colder with each step. Nesrine felt the shift immediately, the way the house seemed to tighten around them, as though bracing itself. Vincent stopped at the door. The key was still in the lock. Nesrine turned it. The door opened with a soft sigh. She stepped inside. The room was dim, lit only by the thin light filtering through the high window. The 5 bodies sat around the table, arranged with a precision that made her skin prickle. Their hands were folded neatly. Their eyes were closed. Their faces were peaceful, almost serene. Death rarely looked so composed. Nesrine moved closer, her gaze sweeping the table. 6 wine glasses, 6 plates, 6 chairs. Only 5 occupied. She touched the back of the empty chair. Dust clung to her fingertips. A faint indentation marked where someone had rested their hand. Recent, deliberate. She turned to Vincent. "You didn't move anything." "No," he whispered. "I didn't even step inside." She believed him. He didn't have the imagination for this. Nesrine walked slowly around the table, studying each face. The victims were middle-aged, well-dressed, their clothes expensive but understated. People who had known each other. People who had trusted each other enough to sit down to dinner. But dinner had never been served. The wine was untouched. The plates were empty. The candles had burned down to stubs. A gathering interrupted or completed. She stepped back, letting the room settle around her. The air felt heavy, as though saturated with something unsaid. Birkin House had always been a place of whispers, artists, lovers, secrets. But this was different. This was ritual. She closed the door gently. "Get him to the station," she told the young officer. "Keep him warm. Keep him talking." "And you, Captain?" Nesrine looked toward the window, where the first pale light of dawn was beginning to seep through the fog. "I'm going to walk the house." She moved through the rooms with the quiet certainty of someone who understood that houses had memories. The living room smelled faintly of old perfume. The study held books swollen with damp. The upstairs hallway creaked under her weight, though she walked lightly. In the master bedroom, she paused. A window had been opened recently. Salt air clung to the curtains. Footprints, faint, almost invisible, led toward the balcony. She stepped outside. The sea stretched below, dark and restless. The private cove behind the house was barely visible through the mist, but she could make out the faint scrape marks on the rocks. Marks left by a boat dragged ashore. Someone had come by water. Someone had left the same way. She leaned on the railing, letting the wind whip her coat around her. The tide was rising. The storm was coming back. And somewhere out there, the sixth guest was watching the house, waiting for the right moment to return. Nesrine closed her eyes briefly. She had seen scenes like this before, carefully arranged, meticulously planned, the work of someone who believed themselves an artist. But this felt different. This felt personal. She opened her eyes. The sea churned below, dark and hungry. Birkin House stood behind her, silent and expectant. And Nesrine Boudaoud, who had spent her life listening to the things people tried to hide, felt the first stirrings of something she had not felt in years. A case that mattered. A case that would not let her go. She turned from the balcony and walked back inside. The house exhaled.